Hello, Internet, and thank you very much for tuning into Cloud Native FM podcast. And today is a big day. Today, I am joined by Chris, who is a VP of Engineering at Linux Foundation, and we will be talking about KubeCon, CloudNativeCon, EU, and NA 2022, and discuss all the vendor announcement from the past couple of weeks. KubeCon had close to 17,000 join virtually from all across the world. Of that number, close to 7,500 joined in person, and that doesn't include Phippy and friends and family who made an appearance too. 61% of attendees joined for the very first time, and this podcast is all about removing the curtain, going backstage, appreciating all hidden people involved, getting the idea around what it takes to the central stage and what makes it a unique and most vast IT conference in the world. And correct me if I am wrong. So let's go straight to Chris. On Thank you very much, Chris, for joining us on the Cloud Native FM podcast. So let's introduce yourself to my audience first, and then we talk about all the greatest announcement from the KubeCon.
Awesome. Pleasure to be here. Chris Aniszczyk, serve as VP at the Linux Foundation and also serve as kind of co-founder and CTO of the Cloud Native Computing Foundation. Super excited to be here, talk a little bit about KubeCon, just what happened. I just actually got back from Tokyo last week where we hosted the first Cube Days out there, which was very exciting. And then I'm happy to talk a little bit about next year of kind of what we're going to do with KubeCon. We have some changes that we're actually going to announce today to the conference, so it seems like a perfect time to chat about them with you and your audience.
Yes, absolutely. So let's talk about first the KubeCon transparency report because it's reflect a number for idea. So tell us what is most excited about in this report.
Yeah, so we put together these transparency reports every year. Actually, not every year. So it's like after usually a month conference has held. The details, who attended, with virtually, physically, which sponsors were there, kind of, percentages of end user talks versus not end user talks. So basically every piece of detail that you truly care about the conference. So for like KubeCon North America, for example, obviously the majority of people that attended the conference were from, North America, right? But if you kind of look at the overall kind of numbers, we had number two country in attendance, was India, followed by, Canada overall. So, to me, it does reflect that, even though the conference, obviously is in North America, KubeCon is a global community. We have people all over the world participating in CNCF projects, in the conference, on the program committee, and so on. And I think what people don't also kind of realize is these events essentially or almost planned a year and a half in advance. So like, as we speak today, we're already planning and booking event venues for 2024 in terms of conference space, because anytime you have a physical event that has, almost 10,000 plus people, it just limits the conference centers and venues that you could kind of choose all over the world. And, from a CNCF perspective, we're really trying to choose new locations and try to not really like repeat venues as much as possible. So for example, next year, we're heading to Amsterdam for KubeCon, Europe, and then also Chicago for KubeCon North America. And we haven't finalized the 2024 venues, but I'll keep those secret in terms of which cities are in the running. But in terms of the report, if I was going to give you a few takeaways, is one, the conference obviously is still growing and is probably one of the largest open source conferences in the world, if not the largest. That's awesome. In terms of like interesting trends, we have this concept of co-located events. So like KubeCon is usually 5 days. We do 3 days of KubeCon CloudNativeCon, and then 2 days of what we call co-located events. And so these are generally smaller conferences within a conference. So things like Cloud Native Security Con, GitOps Con, Backstage Con, Cloud Native eBPF Day, and so on. And so if you kind of look at the numbers, is people still are very excited about Kubernetes, no joke, but there's a lot of interest in what you almost want to think about like day two things, right? So Cloud Native Security Con/Day is our most popular colo, followed by, I believe, Argo Con and Backstage Con, and Service Mesh Con. So you kind of see these topics like, Argo, GitOps, related things, Backstage, obviously developer portal, Service Mesh Con, Cloud Native Security Day. They're all kind of like security day two things. And so I think what we have is, even though 60% of the people, whatever, attending KubeCon are brand new to KubeCon, there is a level of maturity in terms of the technology being adopted. A lot of people are like, I kind of get Kubernetes. It works for me. I want to know how to improve my developer experience. How do I improve my security and so on? And so we're trying to essentially cater to both audiences, which is a little bit hard sometimes, where we have a lot of new people, but we also have a lot of experienced people at the event. So I'll stop talking, and maybe you could ask some questions before I kind of cover the report a little bit more.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. So let us know, because I am excited to know about this. As you already mentioned during the podcast, like 1.5 year earlier, you planned for the next KubeCon. Is now the 24 planning. What is the planning is all about? Like how you actually involve which cities, how you contact the different cities people, and how this communication start.
Yeah, so to kind of answer your question, like how does the planning for a KubeCon start? So, we have a process internally that, if you look at the CNCF staff, we're almost 50 people roughly, if you go to our staff page, and more than half of those folks are involved with event planning. It's one of the largest kind of things and most important things we do for our community. And so we essentially work in tandem with Vanessa Herrick, who's kind of runs our CNCF event strategy and team, and kind of work with them to go out and reach out to a bunch of venues based on kind of heuristics that we're looking for. So things like new city, reasonably priced, in a good environment, and so on. So like we kind of have this list of things, and kind of off of that and select the city and venue that will kind of meet those needs. Be able to fit. We almost had 250 or so sponsors at KubeCon North America, which is funny because that's actually a lot of sponsor halls. And what you could actually, when you look at venues, sometimes you could find a venue that could fit more than 10,000 people in the same place, but they can't fit 250 sponsors. So it just it's a really tough game. It's a lot harder than people think it is. So those are kind of the boring logistic things, and we have to kind of sign these contracts way in advance. It's also what's also happened, by the way, is during COVID, obviously all the kind of physical events went away, right? But what didn't go away is companies still love to host events. They just push them out. So event venues are like overbooked too. So it makes it just a very interesting challenge of sometimes making this all work and kind of juggling things. Other things that we do is, so a lot of people don't realize is, CNCF, we're mostly just responsible for the logistics of the actual event. We have the community that helps kind of, plan the content and overall theme for the program. So every year we select program chairs, right? So a lot of people are familiar that we have usually 3 program chairs now for KubeCon, folks like Emily Fox, Ricardo, from CERN, Liz Rice in the past, Kelsey Hightower in the past, all these folks kind of get involved, and we basically bring them on to fully support and kind of decide the theme, for the conference every year. So that's why, like, every year, KubeCon could always seem a little bit maybe different in themes, because we have new community members that are in place that kind of help shape that theme. So it's not CNCF staff or me picking talks or anything like that. It's the program chairs that work with them, and we pay them a little bit of a stipend with the actual planning, because it is a lot of work. If you've never been a program chair for a large conference, it's a ton of work, because a lot of people complain, they want changes, they want this thing, so it's a very tough job. And that's usually paired with the program chairs help staff up. We have usually about, I would say, 150 to 250 program committee members. And so these are people that help basically pick the actual talks. They vote on them. They help us kind of work with what tracks and so on we had. So truly, like, KubeCon is a very much, I would say, content-wise, completely community, driven. CNCF behind the scenes handles kind of the boring, find the venue, make sure the event is, going to run in a break-even fashion, and try to make it accessible as all to everyone. Because for us, we are a global foundation, and we truly want to have folks all over the world participating, whether it's virtually or through a scholarship or anything. So we truly try hard to make that happen. So I could definitely go into like more details and so on in terms of like event picking and so on. But I think in general, I think all I want people to take away from this is CNCF as staff and foundation, we handle all the boring stuff, behind the scenes, ensuring that we have a great, successful event. The community that works in tandem with the program chairs that we help select and rotate at a rear to craft truly one of the best kind of content experiences out there. So hopefully that makes a little bit sense for you. So
Yes,
happy
absolutely, absolutely. And I think like I
yeah.
see the KubeCon as a I can yes, I can see the KubeCon as a IT Olympics of IT, or something like a football World Cup. Like everybody's
Yeah.
taking eyes out, and where is the next location who hosted the KubeCon? So it's a lot of excitement throughout the community. And also, I think during before the KubeCon, there is always a ladder how you join the CNCF. And that
Yeah.
ladder is called Sandbox Incubated and Graduation. And I see as of
Yeah.
today, some 6, 7 project is joining the Sandbox project. And you are the
Yep.
best one to tell us how this ladder actually continues on, like Sandbox Incubated Graduation. So
Yeah.
let
Sure.
us.
No problem. I'll talk a little bit about the projects and kind of contributing in general, because I think it's important to know for folks, like, there's multiple ways to contribute to CNCF. It's not just projects and code. You could host events and so on. So there's a lot of different things. So in terms of new sandbox, projects and process. So yeah, CNCF, we have three stages of maturity for projects, right? So if you go to cncf.io/projects, that page will show you this kind of wonderful little it's called graph that has sandbox, incubating, and graduating as a 3 levels. Sandbox projects are basically, they're meant to be early stage projects, like things that are a bit of experiments. We're not sure if they're going to be as big and as useful maybe as Kubernetes, but they're interesting to the technical board, or TOC, which helps vote these projects on. We have an 11 person TOC where they essentially have to vote on a majority basis to elect new projects into the sandbox. So for me, I've always liked the sandbox in many ways, because it allows us to experiment. If you remember a long time ago, service meshes were pretty new. Like, I think Linkerd arguably could be one of the first early service meshes, out there in terms of, modern, what we consider modern service mesh. At the time, we didn't have a sandbox. And so when Linkerd was, kind of applying to be part of CNCF, we needed to do something, because the TOC at the time were like, service meshes are going to be a thing for sure. Like, this is a way to kind of truly handle scalable, observable, services in a secure fashion. People are going to use more of these. We should find a way to cultivate the growth of these in ecosystems. So hence the sandbox was created, I think like in 2017, or I think around 2017, where we, added Linkerd, I think, as the first sandbox, projects. And ever throughout that point, like, the majority of our projects have been starting in the sandbox. And we actually have a cool, I wish I could show you on my screen, but maybe you could link cncf.io/projects. There's a fun graph on the cncf.io/projects page, if you scroll down, that says projects accepted over time. And if you kind of look at the early history, you could see that, 2017, 2018, there was very few sandbox projects, right? It was mostly incubating at the time. And then really, I think late 2018, 2019, the sandbox kind of started to explode and, went with a lot more, projects, over time. So I'm definitely excited kind of with these kind of new projects that are coming in. They tend to reflect a little bit more of what I've talked to you about, kind of like day two related things. So whether it's improving developer experience, you have things like dev space that, just like basically just makes it easier for people to develop and work with Kubernetes. I think people have less questions that like, hey, is Kubernetes actually useful or helpful for me? It's more of like, how can I make my usage more effective? How can I make my developers more efficient? How can I make my architecture and deployment more secure? How can I improve observability? So that's a lot of the kind of projects that you're seeing enter, the sandbox. The other final point that I kind of wanted to make is we love new projects. They're always great, but there's so many different ways to contribute to CNCF. We have this wonderful website called contribute.cncf.io, which whether you're a maintainer or just like a brand new contributor, has multiple ways for you to get involved, whether it's hosting an event. You could host your own Kubernetes community. I know there's KCD Pakistan is coming up. We had, I know people are doing a KCD in Australia. There's a KCD in Amsterdam that I was just invited to speak to. So to me, like, don't feel that you only have to, contribute code. Like, bringing people together is just as valuable as contributing code. So feel free to take a look at all the resources at contribute.cncf.io. There's information on how to host KCDs, how to contribute code, how to perform and help out with mentorships. We have a glossary.cncf.io. If you like words and making it easier for people, you can contribute translations there. So there's just many, many ways to contribute outside of just code and projects. And that's something that I'm really proud about this community, is that we truly try to make things very welcome and helpful, for folks that are especially new to this. Because look, we have over 150 projects now. And sometimes I get a little bit confused of like what everything does and the terminology. So sometimes I could relate being new and be like, oh my gosh, like pod, service mesh, gateway, ingress, like egress, like it could be complicated sometimes for folks, for sure.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And one more program I want to have, I want you to know people about. That's called the CNCF Ambassador Program. So there are people in the community whose job is to educate people around cloud native technologies, and they are doing the wonderful work for a very long time. So now it's time to appreciate their work. And now you tell us about more, because there is new updates coming up into this program, the CNCF Ambassador.
Yep. Good timing again. We're about to launch it, tomorrow. Basically, we're calling it Ambassadors, 2.0. So we're basically rebooting and kind of restarting the program, because over COVID times, it was a little bit interesting where a lot of CNCF ambassadors, used to host events, meetups, and all these things. And obviously that kind of, shrunk down during COVID. And so as part of these lessons learned, we're taking the ambassador program and kind of rebooting it and making it larger than before. So if you contribute to a CNCF project in some way, if you hosted a meetup or something, we encourage you to apply. Information about how to apply will be there December 15th, which is tomorrow, my time. So look for that. Basically, we support ambassadors via a variety of ways. Like, we give them cloud credits to like do demos. We help them with travel. We help them with quote unquote like pizza and beer and soda money for meetups and so on. So it's truly basically a program that really helps uplift the people that spend time and promote cloud native, and also give them some resources to support. Some new additions to the program that we're about to announce soon is we're also going to help ambassadors with improved presentation skill classes and so on. So, when you start presenting and doing public presentations, it's a lot of like learning on the go, but sometimes taking classes will help significantly. So we're planning to offer that. We're also planning to offer language, classes. So if people, for example, want to learn English a little bit better, we'll have some resources for there, or Chinese and so on. So we're trying to basically whatever we could do to make the lives of our ambassadors, better, so they could reach more people and also reflect that CNCF is a global community. we're aiming to do that. So look forward to those changes coming up tomorrow, and we'll look forward to the blog post coming from the CNCF side. But I truly appreciate all the work that kind of our ambassadors have done. We've had over 150 ambassadors in the organization from all parts of the world, which is truly amazing. So.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. So because today we see the CNCF new sandbox projects. So I think it's a great time to appreciate all those projects who become a part of CNCF as of today. They announce some projects in the list, and the list is actually wonderful. We have Marbridge, DevSpace, Capsule, Zot, and wonderful and good news is that the project I am working on is also a part of the CNCF sandbox. The Parallels, we will love to see community get involved into the Parallels project as well. And Chris, you tell us, because we have actually 5 months of open source and we are now a CNCF sandbox project. So any fastest ladder climbing in the past you have seen in the 5 months to become a CNCF, or
it's probably,
or is it the fastest?
It's probably one of the faster. It's probably one of the faster ones for sure that has been accepted to the sandbox. But I will say, like, sandbox is for sure a milestone. But I always say incubation, much harder milestone, and I encourage you to aim for incubation about a year from now. So and then eventually graduation, which obviously is a lot of work. But kudos on getting into the sandbox. And as I mentioned before, things like Parallels, like basically I consider these almost like day 2 tools for the Kubernetes ecosystem, things that improve security, developer experience, and it's just good to see a lot of options out there for our end users. So the more things that we could offer that makes it easier to do, identity management, auditing, and all that stuff. Goodness for me. So welcome to the sandbox, and good luck. I also encourage you to do mentorship. So if you go to github.com/CNCF/mentoring, we're about to announce our next semester of LFX mentorships, which I highly encourage you to get involved in, because part of the challenge of being in the CNCF projects is attracting more contributors and maintainers. So if you offer mentorships, which we pay for from a CNCF perspective, we pay a stipend to get more people to contribute, there'll be more maintainers, which I think is always the challenge when you have a project that comes maybe from like one vendor or one person. Trying to get multiple folks involved is always one of the hardest parts of growing an open source project.
Yes, and tell us about some new certification planning. Is there a new cloud native? Is there a new Kubernetes certification coming up? Because I want to plan ahead. Or do you think, where is actually the certification exam coming up, on which domain? We have so many domains. Supply chain security is hottest, and I think it explodes. It's going up and beyond. No one's stopping them. So what?
No, for sure. So kind of like, there's 2 things that we're kind of focusing on from like a certification and training point of view, right? So we're over 150 projects now, right? So we're more than just Kubernetes. So obviously things like CKA, CKAD, great certifications overall. What we're also focusing on is new certifications. So, we're in the process of doing a GitOps certification. We want to do one for Backstage. We're interested in Argo, OpenTelemetry. So we want to expand the certifications outside of just Kubernetes only. So that's one thing that we're doing. And so look for those, coming up. The other thing that we're doing also is what we call pre-professional certifications. So things like Kubernetes and Cloud Native Associate, or KCNA for short, and the Prometheus Certified Associate, PCA, which we fall for. And this is basically meant for people that are very, very brand new to the community, are students, or maybe you were a old school Linux sysadmin and you want to learn a little bit more about Kubernetes and Prometheus. These are the perfect kind of entry level certifications to get involved with the community. And I highly recommend everyone looks at it. We're going to do more of these types of things, because at the end of the day, truly one of the hardest things is, outside of just like the basic technical knowledge, like I could use Git, I know what Linux is, getting around, command line prompt, is just like terminology, understanding, how Prometheus works, push versus pull, dynamics, understanding PromQL, understanding the core tenets of like what, a Kubernetes cluster is, how that works, like getting all this stuff and knowledge, terminology up front for people before they have to take like a CKA or a CKT exam is super useful. So see a lot of our focus there. And finally, one thing that we're doing, which I actually didn't mention earlier, is we have a lot of co-located events at KubeCon, and sometimes they're so successful is we spin them out. So have in coming up in February next year called Cloud Native Security Con. So we're actually going to take the Cloud Native Security Con Colo outside of KubeCon and make it its own standalone event when we're planning over 1,000, 1,500 plus people in Seattle and North America next year, focus purely on security. So look for us to do that type of thing more often because we have, I think, almost like 20 co-located events as part of KubeCon, and people are like, "Oh my God, too many! I can't." Like ArgoCon versus GitOpsCon versus ServiceMeshCon. Which one do I attend? So we're going to try to do a little bit more of spinning these out. So definitely I would look forward to attending Cloud Native Security Con, especially if you're interested in security. And we may have some new certifications that we're announcing and launching at Cloud Native Security Con based on Cloud Native Security. So pay attention to that.
Wow, wonderful. Great news. Absolutely. And also tell us for the people like who want to become ambassador, who want to contribute into cloud native Kubernetes, and they're looking for the new areas, the new field they can make more influence on. So tell us, to my audience, if they want to contribute to the newest domain, what do you think is the best new domain coming up in the KubeCon next year's, and what is the hottest field to make a contribution and make your voice heard?
So like I mentioned before, visit contribute.cncf.io to kind of find different ways to contribute. But in terms of hot technology areas, so at the Linux Foundation, we just recently released like the open source jobs report and so on. And anything in security, cloud native security is incredibly filled with opportunities. They offer the highest compensation. They have the most opportunities, based on kind of how the world these days. Security paramount of importance to many countries, many companies, with all the hacks and crypto jacking and all the crazy stuff that is going on. I highly recommend people, especially if they're early in their career, consider security. It is going to be one of the best, opportunities, I think, for the next, generation in terms of, career opportunities. Low-level infrastructure, always important, but security is something I highly encourage folks to focus on. I would look at, if you go to the CNCF landscape, l.cncf.io, I know it's very big and lovely, but there's a security section over there with a lot of different security projects that you go check out and so on. And I would look at those, find ways to contribute. So you could contribute to, I'm sure Sam Perilous is very welcoming and available for people to contribute to, but we have a lot of other great security projects. Falco is fantastic and so on. So lots of eBPF projects. So please take a look at them. A lot of them have mentorship opportunities. So I would actually, work on those. And with Cloud Native Security Con coming up, there's always scholarships available. So if you're very new to the community, don't be afraid to apply for a scholarship. Attending an event for the first time in the community could truly help change your career. So I would definitely remember focusing on those things. I have other kind of personal things that I think of interest. I think the whole how people develop software is going to change very soon. So I don't know if you're familiar with things like GitHub Codespaces or Gitpod or Replit, cloud-based development environments. I think you're going to revolutionize software because, Sam, I'm sure you've been like, doing a demo or maybe a tutorial and you're in a room with, 10, 20 people doing a tutorial. Like half the battle is literally getting them to set up their freaking developer environment. Be like, oh, have this VM or have this Docker image. And they're like, oh, this person's using a Mac, this person's using Windows, this person's using... So that developer setup thing is such a painful thing. Cloud-based development environments such as like Gitpod and GitHub Codespaces solve that problem. You get consistent settings. It's more efficient for developers. So that to me is a space that continues to grow. We're seeing more CNCF projects use it. So from a personal, interest, getting folks like, if you haven't used GitHub Codespaces or Gitpod, use them now. It's gonna be the future. So please take a look at those things. And on the CNCF side of the house, obviously, we produced one kind of clever thing that you could do. I know we're getting a little bit at time, and I have to eventually run to a meeting. But we produce these things called CNCF open source velocity reports. So we produce those every usually 6 months. If you go to github.com/CNCF velocity, you could see them. But if you kind of look at the most active projects in CNCF, this is a good indicator of trends. So obviously Kubernetes, but things like OpenTelemetry, Prometheus, Argo, Backstage. These are all super active communities, and those are kind of the areas that I would encourage folks to investigate and learn about. So I think that's it's on my end. One thing that I would kind of love to offer your audience is essentially for early stage certifications, both PCA and KCNA. I'd love to kind of give people a coupon that they could use for more than half off. So I'll put that into your little thing, Siam, as a thing that you could offer attendees, and you can maybe send a tweet out. Okay. Does that sound good?
Absolutely. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Thank you very much. So before I let you go, some final 30 or 1 minute overview of what is the next KubeCon, the future of KubeCons in a 1 or 2 minutes.
Okay, I will definitely do that. So there's a couple big changes coming on. So KubeCon used to be 5 days, right? We're going to change that to 4 days only now. And so instead of 2 days of co-located events, it's going to be 1 day of co-located events. Mostly we're making this change because sometimes 5 days is too much KubeCon, so people are like dead tired by Friday and generally leave. So we're shorting it to 4 days. Co-located events are going to turn into half-day events. So no longer you have full days, it'll be half days. So we'll still have a good rich variety of colos, but they'll be all in 1 day. So that's going to be super interesting. We're also simplifying basically travel. So like the idea is Tuesday to Friday for the whole conference. So you could kind of fly on Monday and be okay. So you don't have to fly on the weekend. We're also simplifying the tickets. I know a lot of people got confused of like, all right, I signed up for KubeCon and then I have to go like pay for all these like different colos, which I'm interested. We're just having 2 simple passes now. It's going to be like all access pass gets you access to all colos, and then KubeCon only pass. So that's another change that is coming along to simplify things. And the other kind of interesting thing that we're also doing is those are like KubeCon specific changes. We're also going to be investing heavily in Cube Days, which is kind of our mini KubeCon that we're bringing all over the world. So we're planning to do 3 of them next year, and they're going to be one of them I will guarantee will be in Bengaluru in India. We're still finalizing the other locations, but our idea is one in South America and one probably in either Eastern Europe / kind of MENA area. We're trying to figure out. So keep in mind, but those are going to be our kind of satellite KubeCons that will be happening as an experiment. So cool. I hope that's good information for all y'all.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. So before I let you go, let my audience know when we see again Chris on my YouTube channel again.
Yeah, great question. So let's find a time where we could go meet. It could be after KubeCon Europe, which will be in Amsterdam, or if there, if I know there's KCDs that are of relevant interest to you, and potentially, I could join your KCD, and maybe we could talk about what happened there. Because for me, I'm always happy to kind of support our local, Kubernetes community days that are happening all over the world. So let's the simple answer: sometime next year. Let's go pick something. Okay.
Yeah. Yes, KCD after KCD Pakistan. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think we should do that. Absolutely, we should make that happen.
Yes.
So.
Absolutely. And last, like, where is your vacation plan? How you spend your holidays? Where you plan to travel? And
My my wife is Mexican, and so we're going to be heading to Mexico City for the holidays, which is a lovely, amazing city. It's one of the largest cities in the world. So we're basically going to spend time with family and friends out in Mexico City, both for Christmas and New Year's and all the wonderful kind of New Year holidays, that happen. So love Mexico, good food, good people, great family. I always prefer to go skiing and hit the mountains, but we're going to do Mexico first. So good to be here. Thank you for the opportunity to speak and reach out to your community. As I mentioned, I'll drop in a code that you could share to your community for PCA and KCNA exams. We would love to folks to take those. And other than that, let me know how I can help. Thank you again so much for being a great ambassador to kind of cloud native and hopefully I hope that you have a great vacation and holiday also.
yes, absolutely, absolutely. Chris, it's a wonderful talking to you. And I think this is the last podcast of the year. And everybody who watches, I think you could have get a feeling of there is so much great stuff coming up. So keep an eye out on it, and definitely follow Chris on the Twitter because he always share some wonderful, exciting news around Kubernetes and cloud native. So we'll be meeting again on the future as well. Stay healthy, stay safe. Bye bye, everyone. Hope to see you again in the future.